In this video, we're looking at a vintage 1947 D-28. We're going to tell you all the specs on it, who is the kind of person that has a 1947 D-28,
who wants one,
what it relates to, what it's like, what's different, what's special about it, and we're even going to let you hear it. All of that coming up very shortly. Welcome back to the Acoustic Shop. I am John, here with Jeremy, talking vintage guitars.
Oh,
Jeremy.
man, I'm so excited.
Are you really, though?
I am. I love vintage guitars.
You don't even care for guitars.
Oh, you caught me. I hate them. John, would this be considered post-war?
This is a post-war guitar. You are correct, Jeremy. We're going to be talking about this 1947 D-28, all the cool specs and things that make it special. What is it that is special about that Martin sound? Before we get into that, though, I would love for you guys, I'm going to go ahead and encourage you one more time, because this is the last time I'm going to do this.
They should know the drill. Like, if you watch any YouTube video, they all ask you to please like and subscribe, but you're not doing it. Come on, guys.
Do it right now.
You're probably putting grease down your plumbing, too.
Why are they doing that?
I don't know. They're told not to do it, but they still warn them every video. Do not pour hot grease down your drain. It'll coagulate.
What's wrong with doing that?
Clog up your drains.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, please like and subscribe. Be sure to share this with other people that also like cool instruments. This one, if you know anybody that's a vintage fan, share this video because it's a really cool guitar we had come in the shop. And also, we have a full video of the performance. We did a guitar and mandolin version of Old Home Place. The Dillard Standard that was from the Ozarks. So check that out. That's in the description below. But the rest of this video, we're mostly going to talk, so save your complaints about all the talking. Keep them to yourself. We're going to talk and play this guitar. It is a vintage 1947 Martin D-28, right?
That is
not
correct.
An HD?
Not an HD. In fact, nothing was called an HD until the late 70s when it was reintroduced as herringbone D-28. And again, I'll back this up so you know there's a little Martin history here. The original D-28 had herringbone trim on it. It was an Adirondack spruce top, Brazilian rosewood, different X-brace pattern, was scallop braced. There's some changes that happened in this era here. This is a 47, so by the time we get to 1947, herringbone is no longer on here. They have scooted the X-brace backwards. They have quit scalloping the braces from factory. They have now moved on to Sitka spruce, but still continue to use Brazilian rosewood up until, I believe, 68, and then we started moving into Indian rosewood. There you go. See you later. That was all you need to know.
A little factoid.
No, it wasn't really. This is also a big change for this was a guitar with 11/16 in 1940. They went from 1 3/4 inches to 11 inch and 11/16, and that's what this guitar is right here. Again, no guitars from Martin had a truss rod. Well, they had a truss rod in them, an adjustable truss rod, not until I believe 1983, where they put in the first of the adjustable truss rods. So all this had in it was what they call the T-bar. It was a steel or iron bar that would
like an I-beam, but just missing the bottom half of it.
So it was like a T-bar, and that's why they call it a T-bar.
Unlike the ones where you go and get tea and fancy teas. There's T-bars now, but they're a different thing. And but this also didn't need it because it has a baseball bat for a neck,
there is that, and you also have to realize, yes, the argument for the T-bar, and there's some builders coming back to building them that way.
Martin doing some of their
so they're authentics and stuff that were that way. Here's the deal on the T-bar. It was really, really good at keeping the neck straight and stiff. It did a really good job of that until it didn't. And I think that's the whole trick. Wood always finds a way to move. It was very stable, very stiff. Yeah, to have that in there keeps it from warping as easily, but you can't adjust it back out of it. So there's this trade-off. Yes, it works better. There is more mass with that in there. So it does tend to make a little bit of a difference in the sound of the guitars, but it also kind of, you know, I'm willing to give away that, I guess, for an adjustable one for me, because it means totally different kinds of repairs have to be done as it slowly does bow up. So there you go, a little bit of Martin history for you. This guitar came into us actually from a friend of ours from Washington State. We played a festival up there. This lady and her husband, her late husband, were there when we originally started playing in Darrington, Washington. Yeah, I had the right town, and was a big part of that festival and that bluegrass club up there. And this guitar was with him for a long time. He has since passed, and his wife still runs the festival. We went up there and still did this. But it was time, she said, this has been sitting long enough, so it was time to try to find a new home for it. And so this is a legacy guitar here.
Especially from that Northwest area. And also a player's guitar. Her husband played this guitar, wore it out, and that's what a lot of these vintage Martins are going to be. They weren't really thinking of these as someday this is going to be worth a fortune, I'm going to keep it in pristine condition. They're like, I get this out at every bluegrass festival, and I play it every weekend, and I jam at the campfire, and I play it on stage with a giant belt buckle. I'm playing this guitar, not really worried about the scratches and dents in it.
Exactly.
So this one has lots of those storied marks on it, just like most of the vintage guitars you're going to get in this period.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the specs on a 1947 D-28. The customer, or the person that's wanting this, has this priced at $24,999. So you can check that out.
It's a bargain, just under $25,000.
99.
Like literally just under.
Anyway, just barely. It is a dreadnought style guitar, Sitka spruce top, Brazilian rosewood back and sides, which does make it a much more collectible guitar. A mahogany neck with the rosewood head plate on here. That was also really cool. They would use Brazilian rosewood on those head plates. It does have an ebony bridge and an ebony fretboard. It has the multiply binding, so it's the white binding, black, white, or white, black, white, black, white. Anyway, in there, it does have a bone nut and saddle that is actually fresh and new on this particular one. It does have the T-bar, so no adjustable truss rod. It is X-braced, and it is not scalloped. This has the original Grover tuners on it, and it was sprayed with a nitro finish as well. The neck was originally a gloss finish. It has wore off since then, so there's really not much of a finish left on here at all. It does have the original case with it right now, which is really, really cool.
Bumper stickers stuck to it.
With some of those on there. It's very, very cool to see that. It does have, neck profile. Big. Yeah, I want to say massive. I want to say, let's go with baseball
vintage Martin.
This is exactly what you would expect from a 47. It is very bulky.
The higher up the neck you go, the bigger it gets.
Yeah. Even though it is an 1 11/16 at the nut width, it's a big boy. So, yes. But again, that helps to give it that tone, that thickness, that vintage tone. It is a full-scale guitar at 25.5 inches. And, yeah. A few modifications have been done.
It's had a number of neck resets done.
Most of it is actually original, which I am excited. The tuners are still original. Like you said, it has had a couple of neck resets on it and is in okay position right now. I can see in the future where it will need another neck reset. Again, the bridge has been replaced, and we recently had a brand new saddle put on here, as well as the pickguard has been released. Now, here's what's the cool part. There are no top cracks in this, except for the pickguard crack, which is common. We don't even list that anymore because
I think they're officially called the Martin pickguard crack because they all did it right there at the same spot.
With the shrinking celluloid and the fact that they glued it directly underneath the finish, that's a common thing. So they did have to replace the pickguards because that one had curled up and done. So this is a new pickguard on here, but. There's a couple other cracks in here, but overall, this is pretty well what you'd expect. A player-grade guitar that is ready to be played as of right now. If you're looking for more of a bluegrass canon type of guitar. And it has that 47 sound. It's a different sound. The vintage 30 sound is different than the 40s era sound, especially being that moved X brace, that different scallop bracing. Those are all different. It's more mid-rangey, but yet loud and punchy, doing what it was kind of designed to do, which is get in a band situation, kind of blow up. And it does a great job doing that. This is one of those guitars that, yes, it's extremely pricey. It is very, very pricey, but these markets keep going up. Anybody who's followed vintage guitars knows Brazilian rosewood Martins, D-28s, this is where the values keep going up and up and up. And what's kind of cool about this guitar is it's a player grade. This is not a Case Queen style guitar.
It's not going to be on display in your room. It's going to be pulled out and played. And
which still has a lot of collector value to it, too. So, being that it's mostly original, there is a lot. Now, again, somebody did ask on this, Yes, the bridge plate has been replaced. I looked inside there, and it's in great shape right now. So, and it was done right. I saw that they did hide glue inside here, and it does look right. So, this instrument's kind of for that person who's always wanted a all original
Vintage.
post-war vintage Brazilian rosewood D-28. That's what we're looking for right now. As far as the sound, again, this is loud. It's proud. It's not that boomy 30s era with more sustain.
I
It's
think
a
that was mostly
tighter,
with the
drier.
shifting of the braces back, and I know Martin.
All of those things.
Martin did that because they were starting to get some of the big bellies in the top, and decided, all right, we're gonna give it a little bit more support on the top, but that also
Yeah.
killed some of the low.
Which
deep,
this one looks
woody
great. It's got a little
resonance.
bit of a belly, but it's not much. And again, that's why they did the X-brace change. But it did change the sound of it, so it does not sound like a 30s era or even the early 40s era with non-scallop bracing. This has got a beefier bracing system, but it's still a 40s era Brazilian rosewood dread, so it's got a vintage tone that is all of its own. So a great sounding guitar. The worst thing that I can tell you about this guitar is the fact that it's got a big old neck and is not for the faint of heart when it comes to pricing. This is a expensive guitar.
There's no way to say it. Like, don't take our investment advice. You have to get those disclaimers. But it's rare for a vintage guitar like this not to go up in value. So when people are like, man, who could spend that much on a guitar? It's probably not a bad investment for somebody that wants to play a vintage guitar and then someday maybe sell it. It will most likely be worth a lot more than you paid for it now.
It'll definitely be worth what you paid for it, and definitely more. I don't know how much. I guess what we can do now is kind of get into our ratings. This is kind of a weird ratings for this particular one because there's some comparables, but we'll get into those anyway and kind of tell you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, Jared, we're going to go through these. Tone-wise, where do you
comparable,
put this?
we're putting this with other vintage guitars. Is that the idea?
Yes.
So in a D-28, I think it's very right up there with them. I mean they're pretty consistent. I don't think I played a real dud from that era.
They're out there. Trust me. I've played.
You
them.
played more of them than I have.
I have played them.
I don't think this is one of them. It's got a great tone to it, very big and full sounding. I'd probably put it at a 4.
Here's my thing on this, and those who have discussed this with me know this. This is not my favorite era of 28. So I'm gonna be pretty honest with you guys on this. I tend to prefer older variations of this scallop bracing. I find to be essential. That said, so if we're gonna go compared to other 40s, 46 through 50 era guitars, I do think this one is a better than average one. It's got lots of volume, got lots of punch. For me personally, it doesn't have as much low end and sustain as what I would want it to be. So if we're just talking about vintage D28s, I'm gonna give it a 3.5, 4, maybe somewhere in there. It's just not. It's a great guitar, and I have a hard time doing this, but it's just not what I look for.
You wouldn't be looking for one in those years period.
No,
You'd be looking pre-war.
no. Is it great? Absolutely, it is great. But for
There's
me,
pretty
it's
significant price difference though between the pre-war.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a price difference. So in that era, that's where I'm going to be on that. Setup and playability. This one has been set up for a bluegrass style player. So it's really good in the first 5 to 7 frets. It starts to get stiffer, which is actually deliberate. You get more punch and more volume.
Without any buzz.
So setup wise, I'm gonna go with a 4 on this because it's what it's supposed to be. It's not a 5, but it's definitely a good setup play.
Again, we're comparing to that era, but I'd say with that large neck, playability gets a little bit of a strike on it because it's difficult to play. The setup-wise, it's set up the way it should be, but playability with that large neck, it's pretty difficult for me. I strummed on it a little bit, so I'd say this would be in a 3 compared to.
I forgot to factor in this neck. It's a big old
Which
boy.
I imagine a lot of players when they get used to that neck. Tony's neck was pretty large. No, he had a pretty thin neck, didn't he?
Well, he did, but I will tell you this. Corey, who works here in the shop, has been falling in love with this neck. He likes these bigger necks because there is a tone character to it, and he likes the way it feels. Again, everybody has their own. But if you're a person who likes a smaller, more slim profile neck, this guitar is not for you. Build quality, again, this is a vintage Martin. It has survived. It is doing what it's supposed to be.
74 years old or
Yeah,
something like that.
I mean, there's little things in here. It is amazing when you look on the back. You can see the mill marks from the way the Brazilian rosewood went through the mill, and you see some of those saw marks in the way it is. And hopefully that picks up on camera when you guys are seeing that. So it's unique. Again, let's
In its
put it
era,
down.
the build quality is
Yeah.
great. I think Martin went through some bad years in the
It moved more
60s
toward
and
the 70s. Yeah, absolutely. These are some of this is still in the midst of Martin's best eras of building guitars. So again, this is a 4 for me as far as build quality.
It's not a boutique guitar build at all, but it's definitely well built.
Absolutely.
So I'll give it,
Aesthetics and looks. I'm going to have a hard time. I'm going to go really high on this because this has the character. If you're looking for pristine dreadnought guitar, this is not the look for you. But if you're looking for classic vintage, I mean, when you see this on stage, this says, I've been
those guys
playing.
trying to recreate these guitars. They would use this as a model of, all right, here's all the nicks and scratches and character I want
love
to put
the
in this new
character.
guitar to make it look old.
That we were looking at it. You can see there a string winder had been used on it. There's these little wear marks on the
circles.
by the peg head, and
Fingers are worn and-
shapes, various things that have been done to it. I find that to be cool. So again, I'm gonna actually give it a 4.5 in the look steel. I think it's super cool.
Me too. I agree with you. I like that vintage look, especially when it's actually a vintage guitar.
Shop sustainable. I have no idea if this falls in ours. I mean, it's
It was-
nitro.
Well, it was Brazilian rosewood when the Brazilian rainforest was being decimated, so I would say no. This is the reason that this isn't the reason. Furniture was really the reason that the Lacey Act was started, but the Brazilian rosewood was definitely over harvested, and that's the reason that it was no longer available.
This guitar destroyed the world. That's
destroyed
what
the
happened
rainforest.
right here. Every time you strum it, you just know this guitar will destroy the world.
Which we normally don't rate used guitars with our shop sustainable effort.
It's not supposed to
and
be.
vintage as well, so we'll skip over that one. But I would say no, this is not.
Overall value, I think it's priced on a little bit on the high side. But again, I almost guarantee you revisit this in about 5 years, and we're all going to go, boy, I wish I'd have picked that guitar up.
That's happened
happens
to us
every
numerous times in
time.
the store, and it's like, or even when we were playing musicians, like, I had a chance to buy a Lloyd Loar for what? You know,
Oh
and
my goodness.
you kick yourself and wish that you would have got the funds together to do it. So yeah, value. This one I think is priced about right. It's about market value. Maybe a little on the higher side of that, but the pricing of vintage guitar is a little more difficult because you don't have a lot of comparables. And I think this one we did a lot of research on. Seems to be right in that spot. If you're looking for a vintage guitar, this is the price range you're going to find it in.
Sure. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a little tone demo of this guitar and, see what you guys think of it. So there you go, another guitar right here. This is vintage tone, absolutely quintessential, what you would expect from a late 40s era D-28.
Always exciting to get a vintage guitar
fun to
mandolin
play.
in the shop.
Yeah, I like doing this kind of stuff. If you guys like vintage guitars,
Specifically
especially
vintage Martin guitars.
there's a video we did a little while back that we got a link to right here. It is where a friend of ours came by the shop with a 1937 D-18, and we went and played it back to back with my 1940 D-18 just to see what the differences were, and there were some differences.
You guys, if you love vintage guitars, you got to check that video out.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so check that out. We will see you again next time.